Hey guys, Joe here at JP Details, and today we'll be completing an extensive wheels off detail on the Focus RS. This was one of the first stages that I gave the car, but I decided to upload the main bodywork episodes first. If you are new to the channel, then please consider subscribing, and at any point throughout this video that you feel my efforts warrant a thumbs up, then be sure to give the like button a tickle. Please excuse the tyre glue in the middle of each wheel as the locking nuts had become rounded off. The guys at the garage next door had used the tyre glue to protect the alloys as the lockers had to be welded off. The glue was placed all around the centre section, which did successfully protect them against the welder. The car was jacked up on each corner whilst I dealt with each area individually, and an axle stand was placed underneath. The wheel was then taken off the car to allow a deep cleaning process of the rather filthy arch. I do clean the arches the best I can whilst the wheels are fitted to the car, but now is the time that the wheels need to be removed to allow a much more thorough process. Thoroughly pre-rinse the arch to remove as much of the dirt and grime that's physically possible. Utilise the high stream of water from the jet wash to make your contact cleaning as easy as possible. Considering that this is more than likely the first time that my Focus is undergoing a proper wheels off detail, the arches are certainly going to take some doing. I've diluted a special concoction of cleaning products inside of my 1 litre double action trigger sprayer. The first is Carchem All Clean, which is an all-purpose cleaner, and the second is Shiny Source, a heavy strength degreaser. I'll be using the products at a ratio of 50-50 to offer some serious cleaning action. Apply your chosen all-purpose cleaner or degreaser to the arch and begin the agitation process with your various brushes into every last accessible area. Be sure to be nice and thorough, as that's what detailing is all about. Work the product into all nooks and crannies, in fact every last section that you are physically able to get to. With every cleaning stage going forwards, we want to maximise the potential from each product to eventually produce an award-winning result. The Tough Shine tyre brush with its stiff bristles did a fantastic job of removing the ingrained dirt from the hard plastic surface. I would highly recommend buying one of these versatile brushes if you can manage to find one in stock. Give the arch a thorough rinse down after the initial cleaning stage and utilise the stream of water to flush out all of the crap from the hard to get to areas. The arches are prone for collecting a huge amount of iron fallout contamination, so I would highly recommend giving the arches a good second clean, but this time with an iron fallout remover. I've liberally applied the fallout product to the entire arch, and I've then given it a few minutes to begin the chemical reaction. Agitate the product with your various brushes, and throughout this wheels off detailing process, by having a wheel bucket loaded with, in my case, Sam's Detailing Wheel Soap, is going to give you a convenient method of easily rinsing your brushes out between the agitation of the wheels. If you haven't tried the Sam's Detailing Wheel Soap before, then I would highly recommend that you do give it a try. The iron fallout product was agitated into every last accessible area, and I certainly made sure to give the brake calipers a few separate hits just to begin knocking back the heavy buildup of surface rust and no doubt an abundance of iron contamination. However, due to the brake calipers never being painted before, they will need to be removed from the car, wire brushed, freshly painted, ceramic coated and refitted, alongside new rotors, pads, fluid and braided lines to get these areas nicely presented. After the iron fallout stage, make sure to give them a thorough rinse down to remove the product residue and the grime, and you should now notice a massive difference. going to be removing all of the inner arch liners from the car, quite simply to offer an even more detailed process and so that I can properly preserve the chassis underneath. Remove the arch liners via the torque screw, circular fasteners or whatever your arches are held in by. With the liners removed, I'll begin with a pre-rinse to remove the loose stuff before jumping straight in with the iron fallout product. These areas are not as heavily contaminated, so we can skip past the initial APC clean. It is surprising how much dirt and iron fallout contamination makes its way behind the arch liners, which does prove the point that by removing them is going to benefit the vehicle from the following stages that they will receive. I used the iron fallout product and various brushes for all accessible areas, and once again I gave the brake calipers what must have been their third or fourth hit. There was an incredible amount of chemical reaction with the brake calipers, which gave me the urge to keep going at them, which I just couldn't resist. I must have made some sort of difference, but you'd never have guessed it going from their condition when they had fully dried out. Give the arches a thorough rinse down when the process is complete. The next step, which we haven't yet done to the plastic arch liners, is to remove the tar deposits. Again, I was surprised with the amount of road tar contamination, considering that those plastic arch liners do fit quite snug. Liberally apply the tar and glue remover to the complete wheel arch and begin wiping over with a microfiber towel, to eventually remove all of the road tar deposits. This process did take me quite a while, particularly with the front arches, quite simply due to there being various suspension components, a washer fluid tank, brake lines, cables and wires that all needed to be worked around. Regardless of the obstacles within the arch, I was adamant to remove every last bleeding trace of road tar. I took my time whilst doing this stage, and I was required to complete 3 separate hits of the product to remove the tar from all areas, including the more intricate sections. Rinse the arch down when the process is complete, and I will then apply a decent amount of APC, which is essentially going to act as a pre-wash, so when I do follow up with a second rinse down, all chemical decontamination remnants will be fully removed. I then switched my attention over to the wheel and gave it an initial pressure rinse to begin with. The wheels were ceramic coated less than 6 months ago, and in all fairness, the car has barely covered any mileage since. They are still showing an excellent level of water repellency, so I simply decided to clean them up with the Sam's Detailing wheel soap and APC. If you do want to give your wheels the best possible clean decontamination or detail in general, then you will need to remove them from the car. By doing this, it will allow you to reach 100% of the wheel and you will be able to produce a far better result. The tyre glue that was put on the faces didn't pose a problem to remove, and just for the note, I do have a brand new set of RS emblems for the wheels which cost £7.99 each from Ford. I do plan to apply a second layer of G-Technic C5 wheel armour to the wheels before this detail is out, so I will make sure to give them a decent initial clean. The wheel was rinsed back down after the process was complete and it was put back on the car. The arches do require a fair amount of additional work, so the arch liners won't be going back in just yet. The front was dropped to the ground and the rear was raised, and I then repeated the process at the back. Fabric arch liners pose a much more difficult and time-consuming process, quite simply due to them being fabric and not plastic. Mud and grime will always find its way deep into the fabric material, and in my case it's gathered in a thick layer on the underside of the fabric, which you will see shortly. Let's say you begin a wheels off detail, and usually on modern vehicles you will find that they tend to have fabric liners at the back and then plastic on the front. Well, when or if you do realise that they are also fabric at the front, your heart will sink. Thankfully for me, the RS has fabric at the back and plastic on the front, so it did help to break the detail up, which helped to keep me motivated. It possibly took me 3 times as long to clean the rears in comparison to doing the fronts. The same process was given to the rears, although they did require a much more thorough initial rinsing stage. Like I mentioned, there is currently a thick covering of mud on the underside of the arch, so no matter how much pre-rinsing I do, there is always going to be a substantial amount of dirt coming out. You'll have to strike a balance between not done enough and sufficiently pre-rinsed. I probably suggest if you do plan to remove the fabric arch liners, then remove them first. They did turn out to be easier to clean whilst off the car rather than still fitted. Either way, apply a ton of strong APC and agitate with the brushes into all accessible areas. This is where the Tough Shine tyre brush comes into its own, as it is a superb cleaning tool for the fabric arch liners. The stiff bristles on the brush agitate the product perfectly into the fibres, and it doesn't half do a decent job at helping to remove the embedded dirt and grime. Rinse the arch incredibly thoroughly to remove the first stage of cleaning product, and then repeat the process for a second time with the iron fallout remover. Be prepared to spend quite a while completing this proper wheels off detail, as it isn't a quick or easy process to do. Rinse the iron fallout product for a final time and then remove the fabric arch liners. They are held in by various circular fasteners and a handful of torque screws, and they are very easy to remove. The chassis of the car underneath the liners are still relatively contaminated with iron fallout and tar deposits, although not quite as bad as the fronts. Due to the light coming in on a close for the day and the pure fact that I had already recorded this process for the far more heavily contaminated front arches, I decided not to continue recording the rears. They were completed in the same fashion as the fronts, i.e. D-iron, D-tar, APC and a final pressure rinse. All 4 arches were given this process, and when they were complete, the focus was finally brought back inside the unit. As you can see, on the underside of the fabric, the mud and grime had made its way around the fabric and has now formed into a thick layer. I gave both the fabric and plastic arch liners a further seeing to, starting with a pressure rinse, followed with a thorough agitation with the Tough Shine tyre brush and the strong APC concoction. I gave the fabric arch liners the longest period of time that I was able to leave them for before rinsing them back off. This gave the product as long as possible to work its magic deep inside the fibres of the fabric. All 4 arch liners were then hung up to dry for a few days. The brake calipers are going to be removed from the car and given a proper refurb, which will be covered in a future video. The arches were blown out to remove the rusty dust particles that may have been picked up whilst the underside was treated, and after I gave the brake calipers an initial seeing to whilst they were still on the car. The arches are now fully decontaminated, and the final stage before protecting the areas is to thoroughly wipe the inner arch down with a sufficient amount of IPA. IPA is essentially an incredibly strong degreaser which fully evaporates after it's been wiped off. I was nicely surprised by the fact that there is very minimal rust on any given areas of the arch, so the rust converter product by Built Amber wasn't required. Built Amber Dynax UC anti-corrosion wax is going to be used to protect the arches, and it will provide a clear film to offer durable and tough protection. The Focus RS isn't exactly a daily driver, although I have been daily driving it for the best part of a month, but nevertheless I do expect this treatment and the underside treatment to at least last for a few years. I did my best to keep the product from settling onto the coilover suspension, and 2 layers of Dynax were applied with roughly 20 minutes between each layer. I simply applied the product to each of the wheel arches and then realised that I still have a fair amount of the product left. With the underside treatment being finished, I opted to apply a second layer to the arches. The product is transparent, so it doesn't make much of a difference to the appearance of the surface. However, the only change is that the chassis is now more of a matte colour. The difference in the texture of the surface has changed as it now feels rubbery, which is a little bit strange. It certainly made a good impact into providing this protective clear film. When the product had dried, I was impressed with the results. I definitely recommend checking out both of the Built Amber products that were used for both the arches and the underside. The arches were then given 24 hours to fully dry before taking some final finish footage. The fabric arch liners were given a decent vacuum with the crevice tool, which did a fantastic job at removing the final 5% of debris. This was mainly little twines of leaf type things that had become tangled into the fibres. The vacuum got the fabric arch liners back to a brand new condition, and I was chuffed. I coated the arch liners with a thick dose of G-Technic I1 Smart Fabric, and they were then hung up to dry for a few days. The arch liners should now repel dirt and water just like the paintwork will, which should make them incredibly easy to keep clean. Plastic arch liners were protected with 2 layers of lithium trim serum with a few days between each layer, simply to allow the product to become properly bonded to the plastic surface, but unfortunately I seem to have deleted the footage. I bought a brand new fixing kit for the liners, which was an absolute must due to how badly corroded the original screws had become. The arch liners were fitted back to the car at the end of the detail, amongst the putting the car back together stage after the rest of the exterior was finished. It was nice to have the car up and in the air on the axle stands, which did allow me to complete the full bodywork process at more of a chest height. The arch liners were fitted back to the car in the closing stages of the detail, which finished off the best part of 235 hours of solid labour perfectly. If you are going to do something, then you may as well do it properly, and considering that this Focus RS is a future classic, I'd say it's time well spent. As always, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and be sure to give me a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Just search JP Details. I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.